This video will help you better understand how to use sources ethically. Information is the foundation of your speech, but you must know how to use the sources of this information in an ethical way. 4 steps are hugely important to the ethical use of sources. Let's start with the first step. Use the best possible sources. This means you must do research, and not the type of research that involves you choosing the first few sources on a Google search. Finding the best possible sources usually involves finding a number of sources that just aren't quite right. Use your knowledge of how to find sources, like through holdings databases and the school librarian, and from there you should begin to evaluate these sources. Upon evaluation, you should ask yourself 5 questions. Is the source competent? Is the source clear? Is it relevant? Verifiable? And finally, is it as objective as possible? These 5 questions will help you be sure that you are properly evaluating your source. After deciding which sources are the most appropriate for your speech, you should next be sure that you properly cite all of your sources. Your class uses a specific citation format, like APA. Be sure to check with your instructor if you do not know this format. To properly cite sources, you must always have a reference page. You must also use proper internal citation when necessary. And when you're giving a speech, you must orally cite your sources, or you risk losing your credibility. Not only should you properly cite all of your sources, you should also work to properly represent all of your sources. This does not mean properly represent them to how they might fit your speech topic. Instead, you should be sure that how you use information would be approved by the source. For example, let's say you're doing a speech on women in politics, and you somehow got an interview with Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. She would assume that you focus on her accomplishments and many of the huge aspects of her life that are important for politics. Instead, you decide to focus on her relationship with her husband. I think that she would be very disappointed by the way you represented her in your speech. Let's get into some other specifics on how to properly represent your sources. You should definitely understand your source. It's hard to properly represent something that you can't even make sense of. Look at this chart on the right. I would assume that most of us cannot understand what this is trying to say, even if it did have the proper captions. Imagine trying to explain something like this to the audience. Adding to this, you should also re-examine your facts and figures. This will help ensure that you didn't misunderstand the information. This will also give you a chance to review your information, so that when you present it to your audience, you will have an excellent grasp on the source. Upon examination, you should be sure that the statistics you use are appropriate. Be sure it is not opinion disguised as fact. After re-examining your facts and figures, you should next check your examples, narratives, and testimonies. Be sure your examples are relevant to your speech. Don't include your own narrative if it doesn't illustrate your point. And use testimonies correctly. For example, if you said Dr. Ross agrees that this acne treatment is the best available, most people would imagine someone who looked like this lady on the right. She would be credible to most audience members. However, if the Dr. Ross you were referring to was not a medical doctor but your math professor, you might have a problem. Dr. Ross may be knowledgeable on some issues, but she probably isn't credible in what type of acne treatment works best for everyone. While contemplating the types of sources you want to use, be sure that you are representing different perspectives on your topic. There's a good chance that your audience will not agree with you on every aspect of your speech, and this is an excellent reason why you should work to cover a number of perspectives. What I mean by this is not use one type of source to support your ideas. For example, if you are trying to persuade the audience to stop eating meat, do not use only nonprofits that are considered a little extreme. Find other sources to support your argument. Perhaps you've found an economist who says that if people ate less meat, they would save money. Or maybe an environmental scientist who says eating less meat could help stop climate change. Remember these 4 recommendations when you consider how to ethically use sources.